there's one thing I like about RPGs, it's the freedom of choice. Freedom to say whatever you want, freedom to approach quests however you want, freedom to be whoever you want. But where most games fall short is that they always expect you to play the hero, a goody two-shoes who saves kittens from trees and follows the path of righteousness. And unfortunately, I am a very bad person. Enter Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader, this video's sponsor and the most delightfully evil game I have ever had the pleasure of playing. Developed by Owlcat Games in close partnership with Games Workshop, this CRPG places you in the role of a rogue trader, a descendant of a great lineage of space privateers. You're endorsed by the Emperor himself to manage your mercantile empire on the edge of Imperial space to expand humanity's reach among the stars. Naturally, this wouldn't be possible without extraordinary privileges, and the warrant of trade granted to each rogue trader provides exactly that. Actions that would normally be deemed heresy for any other citizen of the Imperium are standard fare for a rogue trader who is given free reign to do almost anything they want as long as it benefits humanity. Pfft. Yeah, benefiting humanity is not why we're here. I was told, quote, "Your decisions matter, Lord Captain," and I took that to heart as I set out to make the Coronation Expanse a worse place for everyone. Buckle up as I show you just how horrible this game lets you be. My journey began on HMS Bad Decisions, the void ship of rogue trader Theodora von Valancius. As one of two heirs of the von Valancius lineage, I was brought on board to serve Lady Theodora and prove I was worthy to inherit the title of rogue trader. I immediately began scheming for ways to accelerate this process, but was cut short when the ship was attacked. It's here that I was first introduced to the game's turn-based tactical combat. Fights take place on a grid, with particular emphasis on making use of your environment and taking cover. I built my character to be a psyker with telekinetic abilities, but as soon as I shot a gun for the first time, I found that exploding people into paste with a pistol was my favorite way to fight in the early game. Fighting my way through the chaos, I gained some new companions. Adira, a completely insane psyker, and Argenta, the prettiest woman in any video game ever. Unfortunately, Argenta is a holy warrior who fights for humanity, but I felt confident in my ability to manipulate her into doing terrible things later. My troop continued forward until we became trapped on a fiery bridge. From the blaze came some kind of demon of the warp, donning the guise of Theodora, promising she would rid me of all pain and grant me a weapon to destroy my enemies. My party warned me that this would be heresy, so it was only natural that I had to accept her offer. As promised, she teleported my party to safety, surely with zero strings attached, right? We soon found ourselves in Theodora's bedchambers, and hey, wait a minute. So it turns out that Theodora was taking a forever nap due to taking a bullet to the head. It was a very sad moment for my party, and we all took a moment to mourn the late Lord Captain. Except for me, baby. I mean, I was totally gonna kill her for my inheritance, but now I didn't even have to do the murdering part myself. That made my road to power way easier. All that was left to do now was find the other rogue trader heir and deal with him in a similar way. My party continued to the bridge, where we found him in a rather unfortunate position. Turns out that the people up here were throwing some kind of chaos party without me, and they turned the other heir into a chaos spawn. I was thankful to have an even better reason to murder him, and we made quick work of my opposing heir and remaining invaders. Once everything settled down, everyone was all too happy to give me the keys to the kingdom since I was the only surviving heir. I mean, there was this one guy who wasn't too happy with me, but we handled that problem pretty quickly. I was now May von Valancius, Lord Captain of HMS Bad Decisions. For my first order of business, it turns out that my ship's navigator died during the attack, and I wouldn't be able to leave the star system without recruiting another one. I thus traveled to the Urak 5 station, where my advisors told me I would be able to hire a navigator from a noble family. I discovered upon arrival that the mistress of the station was captured and being tortured elsewhere, which I quickly decided was not my problem. I opted to simply ask the first navigator I saw to come with me forcefully, but unfortunately things got a little heated, and ultimately he was no longer available for navigating. When I got upstairs, it turned out that the mistress wasn't actually kidnapped, but was in fact hiding from the other guy. This also was not my problem, and when I found out that she was a skilled navigator, I opted to slaughter everyone around her in order to force her into servitude. She was slightly displeased with this outcome.
What have you done?
And that's what I call a successful mission. Returning to my ship, it was brought to my attention that workers in my lower decks had begun organizing a strike due to poor living conditions. This was unacceptable. I took it upon myself to handle their concerns as quickly as possible.
The Emperor's judgment.
Here on the HMS Bad Decisions, we're all about efficiency. I was later informed that Adira was having an episode in one of my ship's compartments because the warp was messing with her brain, so I set out to investigate this matter further. While I'm all for a mentally ill woman, Adira was going absolutely insane, being manipulated by some kind of warp creature. Argenta decided that the best course of action here was to murder Adira, and so I didn't object. This supposedly fails the quest, though I beg to differ. We did solve the problem after all. A few errands later, and my adventures in Tyranny would take me to the agri-world Janus, a food supplier for my new empire. I learned of a rebel uprising taking place here against the local governor due to allegations of her chaos worship that was desecrating the planet and poisoning the food supply. I began investigating, and also opted to recruit an alien sniper named Erliet to my retinue, since the heresy of having a Xeno at my side would seriously upset the rest of my party, and I strived to cause as much conflict as possible. We discovered the rebels in a forest, led by Moron, one of Erliet's kin. And honestly, they aren't wrong. The governor they're fighting against is legitimately responsible for corrupting Janus. Unfortunately for them, I'm absolutely down to ruin this planet, and so instead of talking things out, I opted to manipulate my companions into believing murder is a good idea. And speaking of which, combat in this game is insanely brutal. Lightning blasts will blow people up, swords will split bodies in half, shotguns will blast people back. All of the animations are incredibly satisfying, and are especially appropriate for a Warhammer game. Back to Janus, I returned to the governor to discuss her methods, at which point she openly admitted to being a chaos worshipper with power over nature itself. To be using the dangerous powers of the archenemy is a capital offense in the Imperium, one that is punishable by death. But on the other hand, this agri-world makes really yummy food, so I told her that chaos worship is okay. As long as she was sending food my way, I had no problems with whatever happened to Janus. Though, to be clear, it was probably better than whatever I had planned for them. I won't spoil everything about why I publicly flayed this random dude outside his family home, but it goes without saying he definitely did not deserve it. Which is exactly why I did it. Another of my adventures took me to Kiava Gamma, a forge world for my empire that had been captured by cultists. There was a lot of weird stuff happening. Tech priests that ran the forges were corrupted and forced to serve the cultists against their will, and the cult had turned the place into a giant death factory to create weapons and sacrifice souls. Now, I had come into this place totally ready to wreck this cult and restore my forge to working order, but I had to say, I was pretty happy with what they'd done with the place. I took note of their improvements so I could use them for myself later. I continued deeper into the forge where I confronted the big bad guy responsible for all this, and he revealed the secret weapons this place was working on. And oh man, I was in love. I had absolutely no idea what this thing was, but I knew that I needed one for my ship. So when I was given the option to call on the powers of the warp to turn it onto my side, I was fully on board. I mean, just look at this thing, it's like a giant evil puppy dog. It was called a Forge Fiend, and now I had one of my own to smoke this guy in the battle. We made quick work of the cultist leader that captured my forge, and now all that was left to do was to decide what to do with my new pet. My party was very displeased with the idea of bringing it on the ship, but I simply lied and told them I was going to use the machine to fight the forces of chaos, which calmed them down. Mostly. My final order of business before I could start settling down was to hold my coronation ceremony and officially confirm my ascension as the new rogue trader. We traveled to the Von Valencia's palace on Dargonis, where I was welcomed to the greatest coronation of all time. People killing each other. See, my advisors had asked me what kind of ceremony I wanted, and so I told them to give everyone free emissac and encourage them to fight. I couldn't have asked for anything better. I kicked off my coronation by threatening everyone, which was received with thunderous applause. The propaganda machine in my capital was so effective that somehow people saw my coronation as a good thing, and any dissenters were ripped to shreds immediately. My personal favorite part of the celebration, though, was the shooting range, where you could fire on bound prisoners who had done absolutely nothing wrong. My subjects told me they loved my reception, which is good, because otherwise I would have been shooting them instead. Things weren't all perfect though, because I received a visit from Lord Inquisitor Xavier Calcazar. He caught wind of my recent activities in the Coronation Expanse, and told me I was effectively under watch by the Inquisition. Now, if you don't know who the Inquisition is, they're basically the branch of the Imperium responsible for rooting out heresy and destroying it by any means possible. They're one of very few factions that actually rank higher than you in terms of authority. As a bona fide heretic, I decided to trash talk him at every single opportunity until he put his foot down and told me to obey or be declared a traitor. Of course, my heretic plans would continue, but this meant I had a very powerful enemy to watch out for. And thus concludes the beginning of my reign of terror in the Coronation Expanse. There's a lot more evil things you can do in the game than what I've showed here, but I'll leave some of it as a surprise so you can find it in your own playthroughs. I've had a blast playing Rogue Trader in my free time, and if this sounds like the game for you, you can find a link in the description to buy it on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series S and X, and PC. If you're like me and have spent a ton of time on Owlcat's previous games, the game does a fantastic job building on the Pathfinder games, and I've personally managed to invest over 70 hours into Rogue Trader to date. I can easily recommend giving it a try, and I'm very happy that this was my first introduction to the 40k franchise. Thanks again to Owlcat for sponsoring the video, and I'll see you all in the next one.